This is Robert Mardelacci of the Mindshare Learning Report, and welcome to this special MindShareTV InnovateHERs podcast series, episode number 7, with co-authors Dr. Barbara Kurshan and Kathy Hurley, in conversation with special guest Dr. Anjlee Prakash, founder and chair of the Learning Links from India. A little bit about uh, Anjlee as the founder with a PhD and 30 years of expertise in technology pedagogy. Doc, Dr. Anjlee built one of India's most successful tech enabled companies in education as a not for profit. In addition to her work at LearningLink, she has several other positions she's responsible for in the academic, non government, and corporate bodies. Her personal mission is to enhance education ecosystems to make lifelong learning possible for every student. And we've got two legends in EdTech as well, in Dr. Kurshan and Kathy Hurley, who have been my mentors over the years. Thank you for joining me today, ladies, for this fascinating conversation around passion and persistence when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Robert. I'm so glad to have everybody here today because I know that everybody's interested in passion. And as an investor, I don't invest in companies that don't show a lot of passion. It's number one on my list that you have to be passionate about what you're doing. I have a few other things on the list. But today we're going to talk about passion. And I thought we would talk, and Robert will help lead this. Thought we were going to talk about all of our passion and why we're doing this. So to begin with, passion, as you know, is indispensable innovator trait. It's covered in our book quite extensively. And interpersonal sensitivity is a secret sauce or empathy that helps us to humanize our connections with people. When you combine the trait of persistence, it is what keeps us going in challenging times. As we said in the book, Kathy and I found the passion ourselves in studying entrepreneurial mindset and writing our book. Interpersonal sensitivity allowed us to connect with so many innovators, and persistence is what led us to share these stories and the research. So, Kathy and I have been persistent, empathetic, and with lots of passion to create this book and to interview the women that became part of this book. We continue to feel passionate about the people in the book. We continue to promote their passions and share their stories. So, today we want to talk about Anjalee's passion and then contribute some of our thoughts on the topic. So, Anjlee, why don't you share with us where your passions and persistence led you on your journey and tell us a little bit about your journey and how it started?
Thank you. And it's really a privilege to be on this podcast. And I'm really inspired by the work each one of you does. Um, so, coming to what I've been doing ever since I finished my doctorate, I've always been interested in the opportunities that we could give children who were so full of life, so intelligent, curious, but not getting the right quality education. And that has stayed with me. And it has evolved into a passion to see that every child in India gets access to a good quality education to become what they dream to be. So the journey started from there. I've always worked in education, but focusing on the underserved, the underprivileged children was about 2 decades ago when Learning Links Foundation came into being. And we have stayed with that vision and mission of ours to unlock the lifelong learning gene in each child and individual so that they could have fulfilling lives, And what started as 10 people is today 1,500 people, all working together to make it happen.
That's a
Great.
very impressive story.
Yeah.
Very
Thank you for that. I love the notion of unlocking the lifelong learning gene. I've never heard that descriptor, and it's so powerful and paints an incredible picture. Kathy, we go way back to the learning company days and Kevin O'Leary, and you always struck me as someone who had immense passion in everything you do. Was that nature or nurture? Or talk to us about how you discovered your passion and what ignited that.
Well, I have to, I know passion is really enthusiasm also. You have to be enthusiastic about what you do. And I look back in my high school yearbook, and in the high school yearbook, it said, her enthusiasm knows no bounds. And I remember reading that as the high school senior going, wow, who came up with that? But that sounds good. I am very enthusiastic about things. And I think passion is just really moved into the, passion side of the business. I agree what Anjlee said. And I think working with kids, I think being in education, that's just a passion in itself. You either want to do it or you don't want to do it. You want to see kids really um, do well in school. So I think my whole career has been, and I know I don't want to take all the time, talking about it, because I've always been in special ed. I was a special ed teacher. I taught at a special ed camp. I even taught archery at a special ed camp. And I continued that with every company I had been with over 50 years, of that passion of working with all kids. And if you can work with special ed kids, you can work with all kids, and all kids can learn. So yeah, I appreciate the recognition. I think that Bobbi's done a really good job in putting this all together, kind of the passion, the empathy, the persistence. It really all goes together. I mean, on the persistence side, I can remember being, I'm not going to name the company, but I can remember being in a company telling them that they should position their products more in the special ed field. And they said, oh, no, we don't want to be in special ed. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If special ed kids can use these products, all kids can use these products. And I persisted and persisted for a couple of years. And all of a sudden, they came out with a special ed catalog of all of their products. I was so proud. It's like that persistence.
Yeah. So my passion comes into this quite differently, because I came from starting out in a tech career. I'm sort of that techie nerd. And my first job was as a programmer in a large Commonwealth Edison power company. And it was right after the blackout, the famous blackout that took out the whole East Coast of the United States, power blackout. And I was working with engineers, and I remember the passion of that gentleman to solve this problem, but engineers weren't taught how to code at that time. They had a whole staff of people coding the computer. They did whatever engineers did at that time. So I met this wonderful engineer, and he taught me so much about this, what he wanted and how to solve these problems. And I left that job and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not passionate. I want to take this learning that I had and give it to kids. And that's how I got into looking at ed tech. And I did it probably way before anybody thought there was a business in ed tech. I was right after I got my doctorate in education technology and how kids learn using computers. I got my passion, and many times have been offered jobs outside of the field and have stayed in the education field. So according to that, then, Anjlee, in your interview in the book, you talk about what you wanted to make learning come alive for kids. And that's really passion. That's hard to describe, but it's so passionate. Tell us how you did that and why it's still working.
So just to add to what you all were saying, I think if you are passionate, I think you get persistence as a gift along with it. Sort of, it's just linked together, Coming to learning, I think at the core of what we really wanted to do, what I was really passionate about, though we focused on good quality education, the underlying push was to make learning come alive for children. The feeling that we are learning beings. A favorite tagline of mine is alive and learning. So it's not about education, schools, classrooms, exams. Let children be curious, enjoy learning, give them the best resources, give them a good school environment so that it ignites that learning gene for life. And at Learning Links today, all our programs are based on this. not only for the kids, but the programs we do with women, youth, girls, all focused on igniting that learning gene to be alive and learning, be not just a living being, but continue learning lifelong and keep evolving. And we've seen that children who follow that, that zest for life is there with them. So I think, as far as our work is concerned, that is what really, really drives us and what we enjoy the most.
Fascinating. It's interesting as we're talking about this passion driven persistence and curiosity, it comes into play. And, my passion has no clock, is one of the taglines that I have on our website. When we were solving a problem in creating a work and learning space for our community, um, you know, uh, we lost our workspace that we had at the university because they were out of space. So it's about problem solving and parlaying your passion into solving a real problem is, I think, a winning combination, provided you do your homework and you research. And one of my professors, Dr. Bryce Taylor, when I studied sport administration, he always said, do your homework, and it doesn't end when you're finished school. And I was not quite sure what he meant, but have a plan, do your research, and that really accelerates the passion when you're on a journey that is crystal clear, right? You have to have that vision. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense, which kind of leads me to my next conversation I want to have. You spent so much time, Anjlee, building community as part of your passion, and it sort of underlies everything you do at Learning Links, and how you've been able to keep your original people involved in the company, how you've supported them. So, how important do you think community is? And I know Kathy is a big believer in networks and communities and supports lots of them, as we both do. So, how did that drive your thinking in running your organization? And we do know you have so many of your original employees still working with you.
So I think one simple answer to that is that we share the same passion, the teams at Learning Links. It started with, as I said, a very small team, and today we are 1,500 people. But we take a lot of care to recruit people who feel the same way as us. I always tell my teams, you spend so much of your waking hours at work. Unless you are passionate about it, unless you enjoy it, do something else. Don't remain with us at all, or don't join us in the first place. So careful recruitment, initiating them to the values and culture of the organization has gone a long way. And then, Bobby, the work itself, when you see the impact on the children, we worked in a tribal area a few years back where no child had ever studied beyond grade 5, ever. And with our programs today, every child in that village and surrounding villages are not only going to school, going to secondary school, which is about 20 kilometers away, and some of them want to come back to the villages and open learning centers. So I think the impact the work has also drives and fuels the passion and the stickiness that the teams have at Learning Links. So it's been a beautiful journey, and the kind of impact the work has just keeps us going. And, it's just a great feeling of gratitude that we have this opportunity to change lives.
I think it's a really important point. Kathy, I know you're big on communities and networking, and mentoring is part of the book. And obviously, Anjali's model is a mentoring model with working with these people. Tell us a little bit about your passion for communities.
Well, I'd like to jump on something she said about mentoring. Is I think the more passionate you are about these kinds of things, it's easier to mentor, because you really want to build that community, and people, you can build a community by just them seeing your passion about things. So that really kind of hit me. And the other thing that hit me was you were talking is and I've always seen this connection, but also the passion and purpose that we have passion about things, but then it becomes very purposeful. Like you're saying, this whole lifelong learning thing. We
Yeah.
have other people in the book that have a passion for a topic. One of them, Carol Waugh, art. She left corporate America and became a fabric artist. Well, by learning so much about art, she wanted to teach it to other people, and her passion has developed so many people around the world who do this fabric art. And as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about that. So even the communities that the personal communities I have, or now I'm very involved in superintendent communities. I'm in a meeting here in Colorado with 100 superintendents, and you can just see how they gravitate toward companies who have passion about their companies. And you can see the difference when people do their presentations. They're people who really believe in what they're doing, and it becomes it becomes part of them. So I think that building communities is definitely a result of having really good passion and purpose and those kinds of things.
Some
And
things. Go ahead, Robert. I was going to just
yeah,
ask
no,
passion.
I was going to mention, to build off what Kathy talked about, in our work and learning center here in a shopping mall, first in North America. Today we're hosting Thrive Thursday. I wish you were here, lunch with our community members, and we've got students and entrepreneurs, and I have them share a success story, and over food. And I know we often have gatherings around the ed tech events, conferences, that between the various organizations, and it always builds around a common purpose and like-minded, passionate people, and that really drives further passion and inspiration from each other, because that's our tribe, if you will. And it's always, that's our secret sauce here, is building community. And I kind of quarterback that and as the catalyst. But I get further inspiration from the people that are part of us, and some are younger, and that mentorship comes into play. Some are younger, some are older, and we build off each other, which is always a great place to come to every day.
Well, it's interesting watching you at your meeting, because you are really good at building those communities. Bobbi and I, at Robert's meeting, we met some very interesting people, but it's just making sure that people are connecting with the right people. And if you
Right.
know someone who has a passion about something, then I think you owe it to yourself to introduce them to somebody else who you think they
Yeah. Well,
could be
you've been a great
building.
mentor in that
Yeah.
regard, Kathy, over the years. And I talk about diversity being our strength. People are from all over the world here. And hence the food I just ordered while we were talking, I just pointed to a sushi tray that's being ordered that's coming in. But we have food from all over the world, people from all over the world. And I was mentioning to Anjlee that I'm collaborating with Dr. Aman Iqbal on a startup called Immortal, helping people live well to 100, and he's currently in India. So diversity is our strength, and we get further passion when we bring in different lenses and people from different ethnicities.
Anjlee, one of the things that you made Laura, who's one of our other writers on the book, that when we were looking at the data and then we saw your interview, one of the things that came up was that what empathy and passion do. And we found out a really sort of not intuitive finding was that one of the reasons that people that have a lot of passion is that women are able to fire people better from companies. And it goes to, and some of the things you said led us to look at that data. And it's and the reason for that, when we looked at the data, was people that have high empathy scales or interpersonal sensitivity and a lot of passion look through the filter when they fire, not with I'm reorganizing and you don't fit, but with this may not be the right fit for you. and let me help you find it. And you say that in the book, and that's what I want to ask you about, that one of the things you do is give your team the autonomy to execute, and you also consider your team first. So as you let people go, clearly that comes through the data we did find out, thanks to you. But talk about this ability, autonomy to execute, and how you can, if everybody's got this great passion and then they've got all this autonomy, how does that help the organization grow? What are some of the barriers? What are the good things about that?
So, as I said, we are very careful when we recruit. And once we have the team with us, we really nurture, mentor professionally, personally. Uh, I mean, buddy systems, whether it's a personal issue, a professional growth issue, we are there with them. And I think because of the nature of our work, often the teams I feel know more about how to solve challenges and address for the right impact than I do. So if we nurture them well, we have a value driven culture. I just leave it to them. And time and again, they have proved that they can do wonderful work, implement large scale programs, like no one could. We also do have their backs if they go wrong. But yes, that is what we work, and the autonomy is become like a way of life at Learning Links.
I think, as Kathy and Robert know, if you have a passion for something, clearly that drives you, and the persistence drives you to grow an organization and scale it. Do you have an example? Anybody? Does any of us have an example of where passion caused our passion? Kathy gave a great one on persistence in terms of her company, but do any of us have an example of where passion has caused us a problem?
It's an interesting question, I'm sure, because if you are passionate about something and other people are not as passionate, it can cause you a problem. And I think you have to know when to hold them, when know when to fold them.
As the song goes.
So that is where I think sometimes we do have to let people go as well.
Yeah.
They may be passionate in maybe not the way that works in the programs that we do. So we respect who they are. And those are difficult conversations. But I feel it's better to, have them openly. And if they are handled, we plan for them. I do my homework if I have to enter a meeting or a conversation like that. And very often we help them find other places where we feel as leaders they will do very well, rather than where we are. So that's what we
Kathy
do.
does a great job at that too, in terms of helping people move on to their next career and networking. And that's where I think women in the book, and also all of the women I work with, tend to be very good at networking and helping people find the right place for them.
Women are much better at that. I just had one of my clients has been wasn't happy with one of his people, and he just kept trying to move him around, and finally it was like he's not working in the organization. It's like, and I think women do come to grips with that of maybe they're talking it through and saying this might not be the place for you, and it kind of ended up in a disaster, which was too bad. So I think women should take great pride in just saying, you can look at a problem or look at a person, and you have empathy, and we've all been there at one time or another, and just move on.
Yeah.
And I'm a sponge here, and I'm just learning so much in this regard. We have so much to learn as males from women leaders, and I'm very mindful of that. As my wife leads a large organization in a city, and I admire her passion and in combination with empathy. And that's a piece that's often forgotten, and you need to nurture that, I think, as well as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So
as a mentor, you really do have a chance to do more of that, which I think we see that a lot. In the book, of people talk about mentoring, where they've learned their kind of mentoring skills. I think you can learn a lot, and that's why we always say, and Bobbi says the same thing. If you see people who you think could be a good mentor, ask them.
Wow.
and if they say no, that's fine. Then people are busy. But if they say yes, you're going to learn something. You can't be afraid to do
Absolutely.
Just ask.
Bobbi, I think we're coming to our
I
final
have one
question if
last
you
quick
want to
question.
lead into that.
Yeah, one last question. Could you give us all, share your one advice, one thing that you think you should do to take your empathy and persistence and passion to lead a better organization? Kathy, why don't you start? Because I think you almost were there at the end of your last sentence on mentoring, but why don't you?
it. Well, and I think networking, which is something that I really do believe in. I think we have preconceived ideas of people that we want to talk to. We go into a meeting and say, "Oh, well, I like that person. I'll talk to them," without forgetting there are new people in the group, and you can learn so much from them. So I do think taking some chances. I always tell a story when I was first starting the nonprofit that I had. There was somebody that I really I saw him walking toward me, and I said, I said, I hope he doesn't stop. Just hope he doesn't. So I'm really nice, but I just didn't have a lot of time. And he stopped and I started talking, and he ended up giving us a very big donation to Girls Thinking Global, and I thought, well, that's a lesson learned, is you just really have to take time for people. And people have just so many good things to share and to say. And I think that whole networking thing is really important.
Anjlee, what do you think? One piece of advice.
So, regarding passion, empathy, persistence, I think they power each other. And we should nurture and keep that power going. And definitely mentor and share. And as I said, keep the learning gene alive, because I learned so much today from the young teams that I have. So it's sharing and a great journey ahead for a common cause.
I think that's great. I want to add that I agree with what you all said. And I always tell my entrepreneurs network, network, network when they ask me how to raise money. But the one that I really would like to do is that I think I have learned that I'm pretty honest, and honesty is really important. And I'm sometimes too blunt, as my friends and my women will tell me that I work with. But I've learned to temper that. But I think that there's a balance between being honest up front. And if you think that what somebody's trying to do, and I get requests all the time to invest in companies, and I just don't drag them along. I said, this got some really good ideas, but here's why I won't invest. So I think honesty is really important.
Yep.
But kindness has to go with that. So one of my people that worked for me a long time, he said, if you go into the room and Bobby's still talking to you after 5 minutes, it means she likes what you're doing. But anyway, I think I've learned that I have to be a little kinder about it, but I think honesty is important. Robert,
Yeah, honesty and kindness are really good. And before Robert ends it, I'd like to say one more thing, is because I'm looking at this group of the four of us, and we've all had the good fortune, I would have to say, of traveling around the world. And I do think in mentoring people, I usually say go to new places, whether it's in the United States or whether it's because you're going to be a better conversationalist. You're going to be able to talk to anybody. And I think that is something I don't think we really do enough of, is to encourage people to why it is so important to travel. And I mean,
And to build off that, explore new networks and share. Don't stay within a certain tribe. You need to go into expose yourself to new networks. And it's really, my advice is storytelling. As a leader, put yourself out there and share that passion and persistence and tell your story. I meet so many entrepreneurs that are struggling. They want us to help them. They're not selling enough product or services. They're not getting beyond that startup phase. Get out there and tell your story. And if it's a great story and you're compelling and there's a need, you will thrive. But you need to put yourself out there as a leader. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
And a good ending because the book tells stories.
Well, with that, I have the book. So if anyone doesn't have the book, they can go to InnovateHERs or Amazon to get their their award-winning, best-selling InnovateHERs book that features these wonderful women that are with me here today. And that concludes our 7th in our series of InnovateHERs podcasts with Barbara Kurshan, Kathy Hurley, and special guest Anjlee Prakash. My name is Robert Merdlacci of the Mindshare Learning Report. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.